Chapter 6. To this day, I can't say what it was that came over me. It was just that doom feeling, and it drove me out, away even from the strange, curious fellow that was Donald Shimoda. If I have to fraternize with doom, even the Messiah himself is not powerful enough to make me hang around. It was quiet in the field, a silent, huge meadow open to the sky. The only sound, a little stream I had to listen pretty hard to hear. Lonely again. A person gets used to being alone, but break it just for a day and you have to get used to it again, all over from the beginning. Okay, so it was fun for a while, I said aloud to the meadow. It was fun, and maybe I had a lot to learn from the guy, but I get enough of crowds even when they're happy. If they're scared, they're either going to crucify somebody or worship him. I'm sorry, that's too much. Saying that caught me short. The words I had said could have been Shimoda's exactly. Why did he stay there? I had the sense to leave, and I was no Messiah at all. Illusions. What did he mean about illusions? That mattered more than anything he had said or done. Fierce he was when he said, "It's all illusions." As though he could blast the idea into my head with sheer force. It was a problem, all right, and I needed its gift, but I still didn't know what it meant. I got a fire going after a while, cooked me up a kind of leftover goulash of bits and pieces of soybean meat and dry noodles, and 2 hot dogs from 3 days ago that boiling should have been good for. The tool bag was crushed alongside the grocery box, and for no reason I fetched out the 9/16 and looked at it, wiped it clean, and stirred the goulash with it. I was alone, mind you, no one to watch, so for fun I tried floating it in the air, the way he had done it. If I tossed it right straight up and blinked my eyes when it stopped going up and started coming down, I got a half-second feeling that it was floating. But then it thunked back down on the grass or on my knee, and the effect was shattered fast. But this very same wrench, how did he do it? If that's all illusion, Master Shimoda, then what is it that is real? And if this life is illusion, why do we live it at all? I gave up at last, tossed the wrench a couple more times and quit. And quitting, was suddenly glad, all at once happy that I was where I was, and knew what I knew, even though it wasn't the answer to all existence or even a few illusions. When I'm alone, sometimes I sing, "Oh, me old paint," I sang, patting the wing of the fleet in true love for the thing. Remember, there was nobody to hear. We'll wander the sky, hopping round hayfields till one of us gives in. Music and words, both I composed as I go along. And it won't be me giving in, paint, unless you break a spar, and then I'll just tie you up with ball and wire. And we'll go flying on, we'll go flying on. The verses are endless when I get going and happy, since the rhyming isn't that critical. I had stopped thinking about the problems of the Messiah. There was no way I could figure who he was or what he meant, and so I stopped trying, and I guess that's what made me happy. Long about 10 o'clock the fire ran down, and so did my song. "Wherever you are, Donald Shimoda," I said, rolling my blanket under the wing, "I wish you happy flying and no crowds, if that is what you want. No, I take that back. I wish, dear lonely Messiah, that you find whatever it is that you want to find." His handbook fell out of the pocket as I took off my shirt, and I read it where it opened. "The bond that links your true family is not one of blood, but of respect and joy in each other's life. Rarely do members of one family grow up under the same roof." I didn't see how that applied to me, and reminded myself never to let a book replace my own thinking. I rustled down under the blanket, and then I was out like a bulb turned off, warm and dreamless under the sky, and under several thousand stars that were illusions, maybe, but pretty ones for sure. When I came conscious again, it was just sunrise, rose light and gold shadows. I woke not because of the light, but because something was touching my head ever so gently. I took it for a hay stem floating there. Second time I knew it was a bug, swatted wildly and nearly broke my hand. A 9/16 end wrench. It was a hard chunk of iron to swat full speed, and I woke up fast. The wrench bounced off the heirloom hinge, buried itself for a moment in the grass, then floated grandly to hover in the air again. Then, as I watched, coming wide awake, it sank softly back down to the ground and was still. By the time I thought to pick it up, it was the old 9/16 I knew and loved, just as heavy, just as eager to get at all those pesky nuts and bolts. Well, hell! I never say hell or damn, carry over from an ego thing as a child, but I was truly puzzled, and there was nothing else to say. What was happening to my wrench? Donald Shimoda was 60 miles at least over some horizon from here. I hefted the thing, examined it, balanced it, feeling like a prehistoric ape that cannot understand a wheel is turning before its very eyes. There had to be some simple reason. I gave up at last, annoyed, put it on the tool bag, and lit the fire for my pan bread. There was no rush to go anywhere. Might stay here all day if I felt like it. The bread had risen well in the pan, was just ready to be turned when I heard a sound in the sky to the west. There was no way that the sound could have been Shimoda's airplane. No way anyone could have tracked me to this one field out of millions of Midwest fields. But I knew that it was him and started whistling, watching the bread in the sky and trying to think of something very calm to say when he landed. It was the Travel Air, all right. Flew in low over the fleet, pulled up steep in a show-off turn, slipped down through the air, and landed 60 miles per hour, the speed a Travel Air ought to land. He pulled alongside and shut down his engine. I didn't say anything, waved, but didn't say a word. I did stop whistling. He got out of the cockpit and walked to the fire. "Hi, Richard." "You're late," I said. "Almost burned the pan bread." "Sorry." I handed him a cup of stream water and a tin plate with half the pan bread and a chunk of margarine. "How'd it go?" I said. "Went okay," he said with an instant's half-smile. "I escaped with my life." "I'd some doubts you would." He ate the bread for a while in silence. "You know," he said at last, contemplating his meal, "this is really terrible stuff." "Nobody says you have to eat my pan bread," I said crossly. "Why does everybody hate my pan bread? Nobody likes my pan bread. Why is that, Ascended Master?" "Well," he grinned, "and I'm speaking as God now, I'd say that you believe that it's good and that therefore it does taste good to you. Try it without deeply believing that you believe, and it's sort of like a fire after a flood in a flour mill, don't you think? You meant to put the grass in, I guess." "Sorry, fell in off my sleeve somehow. But don't you think the basic bread itself, not the grass or the little charred part, there, the basic pan bread, don't you think—" "Terrible," he said, handing me back all but a bite of what I had handed to him. "I'd rather starve. Still have the peaches?" "In the box." How he had found me in this field, a 28-foot wingspan in 10,000 miles of prairie farmland, is not an easy target, looking into the sun especially. But I vowed not to ask. If he wanted to tell me, he would tell me. "How did you find me?" I said. "I could have landed anywhere." He had opened the peach can and was eating peaches with a knife. Not an easy trick. "Like attracts like," he muttered, missing a peach slice. "How?" "Cosmic law." "How? Oh, I finished my bread and then scraped the pan with sand from the stream. That sure is good bread. Do you mind explaining how is it that I am like your esteemed self, or did by like you mean the airplanes are alike, sort of?" "We miracle workers got to stick together," he said. The sentence was both kind and horrifying the way he said it. Don, referring to your last comment, perhaps you'd like to tell me what you had in mind, we miracle workers." "From the position of the 9/16 on the tool bag, I'd say you were running the old levitate the end wrench little trick this morning. Tell me if I'm wrong." "Wasn't running anything. I woke up. The thing woke me up by itself." "Oh, by itself." He was laughing at me. "Yes, by itself." "Your understanding of your miracle working, Richard, is as thorough as your understanding of bread baking. I didn't reply to that, just eased myself down on my bedroll and was quiet as could be. If he had something to say, he could say it in his own good time. Some of us start learning these things subconsciously. Our waking mind won't accept it, so we do our miracles in our sleep. He watched the sky and the first clouds of the day. Don't be impatient, Richard. We're all on our way to learning more. It will come to you a little faster now, and you'll be a wise old spiritual maestro before you know it." "What do you mean, before I know it? I don't want to know it. I don't want to know anything." You don't want to know anything. Well, I want to know why the world is and what it is and why I live here and where I'm going next. I want to know that. How to fly without an airplane if I had a wish. Sorry. Sorry what? Doesn't work that way. If you learn what this world is, how it works, you automatically start getting miracles, what will be called miracles. But of course, nothing is miraculous. Learn what the magician knows, and it's not magic anymore. He looked away from the sky. You're like everybody else. You already know this stuff. You're just not aware that you know it yet. I don't recall, I said. I don't recall your asking me whether I want to learn this thing, whatever it is that has brought you crowds and misery all your life. Seems to have slipped my mind. Soon as I said the words, I knew that he was going to say I'd remember later, and that he'd be right. He stretched out in the grass, the last of the flour in its bag for a pillow. Look, you don't worry about the crowds. They can't touch you unless you want them to. You're magic, remember? Poof! You're invisible, and walk through the doors. Crowd got you at Troy, didn't it? Did I say I didn't want them to? I allowed it. I liked it. There's a little ham in all of us, or we'd never make it as masters. But didn't you quit? Didn't I read? The way things were going, I was turning into the one and only full-time Messiah, and that job I quit cold. But I can't unlearn what I've spent lifetimes coming to know, can I? I closed my eyes and crunched a hay stem. Look, Donald, what are you trying to tell me? Why don't you just come right out and say what it's going on? It was quiet for a long time, and then he said, Maybe you ought to tell me. You tell me what I'm trying to say, and I'll correct you if you're wrong. I thought about that for a minute and decided to surprise him. Okay, I'll tell you. I practiced, then pausing, to see how long he could wait if what I said didn't come out too fluent. The sun was high enough now to be warm, and way off in some hidden field a farmer worked a diesel tractor cultivating corn on Sunday. Okay, I'll tell you. First of all, it was no coincidence when I first saw you landed down in the field at Ferris, right? He was quiet as the hay growing. And second of all, you and I have some kind of mystical agreement which apparently I have forgotten and you haven't. Only a soft wind blowing and the distant tractor sound wafting back and forth with it. There was part of me listening that didn't think what I said was fiction. I was making up a true story. I'm going to say that we met 3,000 or 4,000 years ago, give or take a day. We like the same kind of adventures. We probably hate the same sort of destroyers, learn with about as much fun, about as fast as each other. You've got a better memory. Our meeting again is what you mean by like attracts like, that you said. I pecked a new hay stem. How am I doing? For a while I thought it was going to be a long haul, he said. It is going to be a long haul, but I think there's a slim outside chance that you might make it this time. Keep talking. For another thing, I don't have to keep talking because you already know what things people know. But if I didn't say these things, you wouldn't know what I think that I know, and without that, I can't learn any of the things I want to learn. I put down my hay stem. What's in it for you, Don? Why do you even bother with people like me? Whenever somebody as advanced as you are, he gets all these miracle powers as byproducts. You don't need me. You don't need anything at all from this world. I turned my head and looked at him. His eyes were closed. Like gas in the travel air, he said. Right, I said. So all there is left in the world is boredom. There are no adventures when you know that you can't be troubled by anything on this earth. Your only problem is that you don't have any problems. That, I thought, was a terrific piece of talking. You missed there, he said. Tell me why I quit my job. Do you know why I quit the Messiah job? Crowds, you said. Everybody wanted you to do their miracles for them. Yeah, not the first, the second. Crowdophobia is your cross, not mine. It's not crowds that wear me. It's the kind of crowd that doesn't care at all about what I came to say. You can walk New York to London on the ocean. You can pull gold coins out of forever and still not make them care, you know? When he said that, he looked lonelier than I had ever seen a man still alive. He didn't need food or shelter or money or fame. He was dying of his need to say what he knew, and nobody cared enough to listen. I frowned at him, so as not to cry. "Well, you asked for it," I said. "If your happiness depends on what somebody else does, I guess you do have a problem." He jerked his head up, and his eyes blazed as though I had hit him with a wrench. I thought all at once that I would not be wise to get this guy mad at me. A man fries quick, struck by lightning. Then he smiled, that half-second smile. "You know what, Richard?" he said slowly. "You are right." He was quiet again, tranced, almost, by what I had said. Not noticing, I went on talking to him for hours about how we had met and what there was to learn. All these ideas firing through my head like morning comets and daylight meteors. He lay very still in the grass, not moving, not saying a word. By noon I finished my version of the universe and all things that dwelled therein. And I feel I've barely begun, Don. There's so much to say. How do I know all this? How come is that? He didn't answer. If you expect me to answer my own question, I confess that I do not know. Why can I say all these things now when I've never even tried before? What has happened to me? No answer. Don, it's okay for you to talk now, please. He didn't say a word. I had explained the panorama of life to him, and my Messiah, as though he had heard all he needed in that one chance word about his happiness, had fallen fast asleep.